Good evening and welcome to the March meeting for the Kenton City School Board. We'll start off with the roll call members.
Mr. Rush?
Yes.
Ms. Stryker? Mr. Watkins?
Yes.
Mr. Albert?
Yes.
Mr. Carmine?
Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, item 3 is approval and/or correction of the minutes of the regular meeting on February 19th, 2018. Do I have a motion? Second. Carmine. All right. Discuss and vote.
Ms. Stryker? Mr. Watkins? Mr. Albert?
Yes.
Mr. Carmine? Mr. Rush?
Yes. Okay, item 4 is presentation night starting off with the KMS robotics team. Come on up, guys.
All right, good evening. My name is Chris Becker. I'm one of the coaches, myself and Jared Mann of the VEX Robotics Club. First of all, I'd like to thank the board, the superintendent, and my principal for having us as guests tonight. We're here to recognize the achievements of these 3 young men, Zach Heinz, Theo Jesenowski, and Noah Ketchum. These 3 guys competed in the VEX State Championships last month on the 3rd in East High School in Columbus. One of the neat things about a coach in my role is being able to see where they start the year off back in September and where they're at now with their robot. It's not a set plan that I kind of set out and guide through that process. It's, here's the game, guys. There's a couple problems you need to solve. Give them a little bit of a starter kind of ideas to work with, and then it's up to these guys to kind of think through the design process. So they kind of come up with a plan. How do we want to attack this game? What's the best way to score points? And then thinking through, well, how can we build it with all these parts and pieces that are presented to us? And it's really neat to see that process of where they start in that very first competition and how that robot kind of evolves through the different practices in the early mornings. Thanks, parents, for getting them there to those things. And just where they ended up this year. The 3 of them put together a little presentation to kind of explain their process this year, and then we're going to take a quick minute to set up, and then we're going to demonstrate a little bit what our robot does. But thank you.
When we first joined the robotics club, we were tasked with getting into different teams. So Zach, Theo, and I decided that Zach is the better builder out of all of us. Theo had the experience from last year, and then they thought I was the better coder. Now, whether that's true, that's up to them. We started out designing the simple clawbot, and then we made modifications from there to what we have today, which we will be showing you later on. We were in 3 competitions other than the state competition. Our first one was in Marion Harding. In that one, we made it to the semifinals in the tournament. The way that works is we are paired with another school team, and we are against 2 other teams, and we compete to see who can get the most amount of points. And we do qualifying rounds at first, and then through normally 40 rounds, then the top 8 are tasked with choosing 2 other teams for the tournament selection. Our second competition was at a Ramtech competition. In that one, we got to finals and won. That's what qualified us for states. We were picked by the #1 team, so that probably boosted us pretty high up. And then in our last competition at North Union, we also made it into the semifinals. States was at March 3rd. On March 3rd, we went there, we just brought a robot in. We saw a lot of other teams. A few schools that we've already seen before were there. We honestly felt a little overmatched, but eventually we pulled through. We won 2 out of our 7 competitions. However, 2 of those matches, our opponent did not have a full working battery. So there were lots of teams there. If we were the top 5, we would have been able to go to Worlds. However, since we lost so many, we were ranked down to the 31st place out of 40 in the qualifying matches, so that really didn't make us look that well for the tournament selection, so we were not picked for that. Our team has worked very hard this year to get where we are now. We've been working our tails off night and day. We come in during practices, and then we have also come in during extra time during our school day to get our robot to what it is now and to just get to where we got. So I'd like to thank you all for listening, and now if we can perform some cone stacking abilities for you with our robot.
So, like the guy said, that was running the VEX State Championship. They said, let's just recognize the fact that all of these teams qualified for state from across the state, and 31st place is actually something to be proud of. And we are very proud as coaches and as a school that these guys represented us at that state level.
Great.
I got a question for you guys. I think this is great. That would be a lot of fun if I was at school still. That would really appeal to me. But in your whole process, I mean, between working together as a team and the design and the putting together your robot and then actually going to competitions, what good lessons have you learned, or what could you say is a good reason somebody should participate in this activity?
Well, I personally believe that
You hear the other guys talk? I don't know about the coding, but they've assigned me a spokesman position.
I personally believe that this helps you just to get to know how technology is working, since technology is what we are evolving to now. So the more people know how to do things like this, the better they will be in their jobs.
Okay, very good.
How many of these skills did you learn in Mr. Mann's class that you were able to apply to what you do in the club?
I learned more of just like the simple, like how to, like simple like mechanisms and how things work. And we kind of put that into what we did to make it bigger and more fitting for what we had to do.
All right. Thanks, guys, for coming tonight.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Anytime you get a W, though, it's good, okay? You get a win, it's a good thing.
Okay, next we have design.
Yeah, they're going to be two separate presentations.
Okay. Design team presentation.
So this year, we have what we call design team stipends, and every year they've been approached differently, but since we write a lot of grants in the district, we opened it up to the entire district to be able for teachers to write individual grants. And so over the next few months, you'll see the teachers that wrote for a grant and were awarded the grant by the district. And so that's what these presentations are about, is they're going to share out what they did with their grant and how we might be able to use it across the district or in the future. So we have two tonight, and Mrs. Girding would be the first.
Hi, my name is Kim Girding. I'm a first grade teacher at the Kenton Elementary. It's my first time writing a grant, but I'm excited to share the exciting things that have been going on. My reason for applying for this grant was to be able to implement a science day, which would involve all the first grade teachers. We have 6 sections. Through this grant, I've been able to supply the teachers with the materials they need in order to perform the science experiments to go along with their lesson. We found that research shows that we retain 10% of what we see, 30 to 40% of what we hear, and 90% of what we see, hear, and do. So conducting science experiments in this way, we're able to touch on the auditory, visual, and kinesthetic learning of the students. So we've had 2 science days. The first one focused on the standard of properties of everyday objects, and that was back in March, on March 2nd. And then we recently had one that focused on living and non-living. The teachers stay in their own room. The students rotate between the classes and do the various science experiments, so they're able to work with each teacher. The students have enjoyed the science days. We plan on having another one in April, and I have a short video to show some highlights from the different stations that we've had. And then I'm going to have 4 students speak.
You didn't share the video with me.
Well, this was a video. This was a video to see which objects would sink or float.
Did you want to play it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Ryan, I had my pen ready.
I know. Well, believe it or not, Science Day runs much smoother than this video would lead you to believe. But that was just a quick picture of all the many things that we've done on Science Day. So I have 4 of my students from my class that are going to share their favorite thing about Science Day.
Thank you.
Or sing.
Can she read that one more time?
Sure.
She did such a wonderful job, and I want to hear her.
My name is Claire Fowler. We should have science days so we can learn more at school. My favorite station was when we tested objects to see if they would float or sink. My name is Merely Dyer. My favorite part of Science Day is doing science experiments. My favorite station was elephant toothpaste when we learned about how liquid changing into a solid.
My name is Davana. We should keep having science days because we get to do lots of experiments. My favorite was comparing living worms to non-living gummy worms. We used magnifying glasses.
My name is Laura Newman. My favorite part of Science Day is when we go to each station. My favorite station was the pancake station where we learned about a liquid changing into a solid.
So Science Day has been a lot of fun, and thank you for listening to us speak about Science Day and for giving us the opportunity to have this grant.
Thanks for coming. Christina Cross.
Hi, good evening. I'm Christina Cross, and in addition to teaching American government at Kenton High School and coaching the mock trial team, I oversee the Wildcat Community Connector program, and that's our internship program. During the time that I've overseen the internship program and also working with students through the mock trial program, I've come to realize that students don't have all the opportunities to have more formal wear or what I would call church or court attire in their wardrobe. And that has presented challenges when either students are going out for interviews to make that first impression at their internship or competing. And while I've helped them along the way, I've really felt there's been a need for what I asked for this grant, and it's the Wildcat Career Closet. I modeled it off of a program in Florida at the University of Florida called their Gator Closet. Basically the college there is providing a lending wardrobe to college students going out for interviews. But I thought it was something that we could start here at Kenton High School because there's a definite need. What I've been finding though is I've had some challenges, truthfully, one of which is what I want to accomplish and the amount of money with the budget that I did receive. I've had to be strategic. So in this process I have phase one. And phase one is basically I established a closet space at the high school, and I have a wardrobe rack, and I've also purchased button-down collared shirts with the Kenton insignia on them. And so that's step one. Step two is I'm going to be hosting a wardrobe drive, and then for suits and formal wear, both for young women and young men. And with that, I'm going to try to determine, the different sizing and pieces. So that's going to be step two. I wish I could have, a nice picture of everything right now, but it's all is coming together. So it will be there, and hopefully next year at this time I can stand up here, maybe with some students who can have a testimony and say that it has helped them, because that's my goal. But again, I'm taking it step by step and not trying to do too much, but doing it within reason. And so far, so good. We do have the step one, and with our career fair each year, I know it'll be utilized at least there, but I can tell you with the internship program, it's a continued need, and I can see this being something even if students are going for college visits. So there's a lot of things where I think the closet could be expanded, but that's pretty much it. So if you have any questions, let me know.
How many participate in the internship?
Well, it's a semester-long program, so we have about 8 to 12 students per semester. I am happy to report that the numbers are increasing. There seems to be a growing interest in it, and students are, hearing the buzz from their friends and everything. So it will probably increase next year. Some of those students decide they like it so much that they stay in it both semesters, and I even have a student who was in it a full year last year who's continuing on for a full year this year. Has really enjoyed her internship. She was at Ohio Health, Harding Memorial Hospital, and has been at different departments there. So she's really gotten a very good view of healthcare.
Great. All right.
And we're also very pleased, or I'm very pleased to tell you that Christina goes to various conferences around the state and is invited to present about our Community Connector program. So it's getting some notice, as well as other schools contacting us about how they can mirror what we're doing in Hardin County. So thank you for going and doing all those. She submits all those proposals on her own. And when she talked about budget, our supply budget for these grants are only $500. So I will tell you, if anyone would like to contribute and help, Christina needed a little more money to get those suits for the kids and things, but if you do have ways or means and want to help with that project, we would gladly appreciate it, or with doing more science and those kinds of things at the elementary, we always would welcome donations or support for those extra programs. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next is public participation. We have Craig Kupperberg, Senate District 1 candidate. Craig, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. First, I want to congratulate you on what you're doing with your students and engaging them in the education process. Those are magnificent things. I had my youngest son, who's a freshman at the University of Cincinnati, learned what he wanted to do in engineering through a robotics program. So the STEM that I'm seeing and the engagement I'm seeing here with students, it looks like you're doing things really well. And I am running for Ohio Senate District number 1, and that's a big reason why I am running. I was an educator for 34 years. 28 of those 34 years spent as an administrator. And for the last 20 to 25 years, I noticed that our state legislatures was usurping local boards and administrators of their authority to do what they know is best for students. And frustration had grown over those years. You take a look at a lot of things that our state legislators has imposed, not only all the testing, but how it was done. It was first a 9th grade proficiency test, and our students didn't do very well on it. Once we got into those 9th grade proficiency tests and realized they were testing students on things before we were able to teach them, we rearranged our curriculum, how we taught things. They did extremely well. So what did our state legislatures say? Well, the test must be flawed. So they brought in a 10th grade proficiency test, which was supposed to be tougher. Same thing happened. Students didn't do very well. We rearranged curriculum, how we taught things. They did exceptionally well. So what did they do? Oh, we got to get rid of this. They brought in the Ohio graduation test. Same thing, didn't do very well. Readjusted, did extremely well. Oh, we got to get rid of this. They brought in the end of course exam, started with the PARCC assessments. Well, that lasted 1 round. Then they brought in the EAR. Lots of other things. Resident educator program. Most experts that you talk to will say that the resident educator program that the state is touting is driving good young educators out of the profession and are convincing young people that are thinking about being educators into other professions and not even becoming education majors. The Ohio Teacher Evaluation System. They took away your ability to evaluate teachers how you saw fit, and they put in this system that not only experts and researchers are saying was misapplied, but the developers of this type of education system that says Ohio has misapplied it. And it has made it harder, and I know because I was one of those out there evaluating teachers, it actually has made it harder to get teachers that aren't doing their job, holding them accountable to it. So it's really done the opposite of what the state legislature has said. They put in what was rated as one of the worst charter school systems in the nation, and has constantly defended it. And recently, because they think they've done such a great job taking over education in the state of Ohio, they introduced House Bill 512. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but what it will do is take the Ohio Department of Education, it'll take the Board of Regents, which runs our university system and workforce and development, and merge it all into one department and politicize it by putting it under the auspices of the governor. And what I've heard from Republicans that are actually voting against it, which is good, they should, because it's going to take away more of your local control, is that they don't want it to pass because they're afraid if a Democrat gets elected governor, it might hurt private education in the state of Ohio. Well, I'll tell you, it will hurt public education in the state of Ohio and your ability to do what you know is best for students. That's the right reason to oppose it. What convinced me to run was the new Ohio graduation requirements. I had been out there warning boards of education almost as soon as they rolled out these new graduation requirements of the devastating impact that it would have on students in the state of Ohio. And if you look at data, it was really easy to see that. Was fortunate enough to be placed on the state of Ohio's work group to figure out a solution for the class of 2018 so we could get them graduated. Because the state of Ohio came out and said we probably wouldn't have graduated about a third of our students. I believe it would have been closer to a half of the students in the state of Ohio. So I was part of that group that came up with the solution. It turned out that the graduation requirements are so devastating that they expanded that to the class of 2019 and 20. Well, while sitting on that committee, I realized that they had turned over high school graduation requirements to public university presidents. Because at all three, the state will tell you that there were three pathways to graduation. One was by passing these 7 end-of-course exams. Well, those end-of-course exams were based on ACT scores. If you could pass those exams, you're going to do very well in the ACTs. The second was the ACT scores. So that's plain and simple. The third was the industrial credentials, but you also had to pass work keys. Work keys was developed by the same people that developed our ACT scores and are based on the ACT scores. So it all came back to them. On their website, when you go and you look up the Ohio graduation requirements, it even said on their website that those scores were determined by our university presidents. When I was on that work group and said, why are we turning over high school graduation requirements to university presidents? I didn't get an answer. I got a lot of back talk. After that work group was no more, I went back and checked. They got rid of that line on this webpage. It doesn't say that anymore. But because they don't do a thorough job, if you look farther in, you'll find that statement still there. So they didn't do a very good job of eliminating that university presidents developed our graduation requirements. Wondering that the whole way back home, all the way back to Hancock County, scratching my head, saying, why would anybody do that? The next morning I got in my office and I looked up in the Board of Regents and went through their data tables. Came to learn that in 5 years, our undergraduates at public universities had declined 13%. That's over 52,000 students. That's more undergraduates than we have at the Ohio State University, one of the largest universities in the nation. That amounts to billions with a B of dollars for our public universities. These graduation requirements were developed to try to pump up and a overbuilt public university system. It's not in the best interest of our high school students. So when I'm told, and I go through all these things that our state legislatures have been put in, and I've been told, well, these were well-intended programs. Not in every case. And when I learned that, and I was done with that work group, I decided I needed to do something about it. I needed to be a voice for public education. I decided to throw my hat in the ring and run to be your representative in Columbus. If we keep sending the same people there, we're going to keep getting the same results. It's like Einstein said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. If we want to get local control back to not only our public schools, but our municipalities, because they just passed legislation to steal tax dollars from our municipalities and start controlling them as well, then we need to send different types of people down there. So if you like what I'm saying, one of the reasons I'm going to boards of education is I realize that they are leaders in their communities. So if you like what I'm saying, I hope you spread the word around the community. If you don't like what I'm saying, I hope you forget I was here. If you have questions for me now, that's great. I'm going to stick around to the end of your board meeting, so if anyone else has questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them as well.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you.
Well, at this time is the time we usually release our guests. So if you would like to go ahead and leave, we understand. Some of you have school tomorrow, I think. Maybe make some paper airplanes. Have a great night. How you doing, Betty? Good.
Okay, moving on to item 6, reports of the treasurer. Approve the following February 20th reports: cash position, check register, receipt ledger, investment report, journal entries, and budget versus actual. Do I have a motion?
Albert.
Second.
Watkins.
Discussion.
I just wanted to give an update. After the reports were run, we did receive our real estate tax settlement, and it was $282,000 more than what I had budgeted. But Mike wanted me to make sure you understand that more people this year paid the entire year than he's ever seen before. So we will probably see a decrease in the second half. So we'll just have to keep that in the back of our minds when we're planning.
Okay, vote.
Mr. Watkins?
Yes.
Mr. Albert?
Yes.
Mr. Carmine?
Yes.
Mr. Rush?
Yes.
Ms. Stryker?
Yes.
Okay, item 7, superintendent's report.
I actually have several items tonight, so bear with me. The first one that I just want to talk about is the leader in me, and I know Mr. Watkins was at that stakeholders meeting on, was it last week? This week? I don't remember.
Yeah, it was last week,
Last
Wednesday.
So Kenton Elementary School has been doing this now for 2 full years, and the kids actually presented a luncheon to stakeholders and held a discussion about how we can engage stakeholders in our school and what our school needed to do. And it was probably one of the best meetings I've attended in 8 years. Maybe because it was run by children, but I thought they did an outstanding job. And I don't know if you had anything to share about that meeting or your experience.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah, it's very impressive. The kids, I mean, these are elementary students, and they get up in front of the group and they present themselves very well, and the things they're doing are I think they're, impressive, really impressive.
They have these academic notebooks, and they can explain exactly where they are in their goals and what their goals are for each of the different areas. They can talk about their behaviors. They can talk about math. I saw specifically reading and some of those goals. They have everything charted out on how they achieve, and all the students in the entire elementary school presented those at conferences. So every child has a notebook, and every child presented that to their parents at conferences. So just some really good things going on. And the middle school has started with the book work, which is you read a book and do some book studies prior to the actual starting of Leader in Me. So I think Mr. Albert is probably going to go with me maybe on Friday to one of their leader luncheons, and we saw Mrs. Parsley present on that a couple months ago, or maybe just a month ago, with some of those middle school things. But my hope is that we can find a grant or find a way to continue those goals, that leadership, that student voice piece in our middle school. And so that would be our next step for that process. So just very proud of what they're doing at Kenton Elementary, and the middle school is getting ready to go. The other thing that I just wanted to share with you was about our STEM program. I'm very proud of the students. You can see even first grade is doing different things with science and different kinds of experiments and learning. And we added innovation classes as a special, you hear that special term in elementary school, they have PE, music. Well, now they have an innovation class, grades 4 through 6. And we're in the process of writing hopefully a pretty major STEM grant. And I sent Mr. Collins and 2 of the teachers to Reynoldsburg to look at maker spaces and look at some things we could do kind of for that middle band right now, but eventually expand out. And so, did you want to share, I'm putting you on the spot, but did you want to share anything about?
I turned it off, I can show pictures.
You don't have to show pictures, but did you, your feelings after going through that process at Reynoldsburg?
So we went to 2 different buildings. We went to, I'm going to talk when we get up here.
Come on down.
You don't have much time though.
We'll be on the camera.
Let's go.
2 minutes. I go through in 2 minutes. So we saw Baldwin Road Junior High, which is in Reynoldsburg. Their program, it was a STEM school, very impressive. They have, it wasn't all just technology, it was also, they had gardening's not it, but they were doing this hydroponics in the lab inside. They were working on a greenhouse outside. They had different setups in the building. It was very, very cool. They talked about for the partial eclipse that they had down there, they set up the cafeteria as a giant pinhole camera. So what that meant was they had 3 holes in the, all the windows were blacked out. They had 3 holes so the students could watch the partial eclipse go through in the cafeteria. So it was very, very cool. And then we went to Canal Winchester to see their learning center. We talked to them on how they do things, and it was very impressive. They have a student-led news team that does, this was, the building's preschool, and then it's 3 through 6. So the preschool, don't worry about that, 3 through 6 building. And they put together, they have a news team that they do once a month. They do a whole newscast that they edit. They get the teachers involved with all this. The day we were there, we couldn't stay till the end, but they paid the Mazza Museum out of Findlay, the Children's Art Museum. First time ever, Mazza, pronounce it correctly, came to a school to set up an exhibit. So they were able to get that pulled off, and it was set up in the library. It's very interesting, and I have pictures of more. Jennifer and I are going to meet this week and go see how we can incorporate this into our current school. So it was very well.
And as always, there's things we know we can do without money, and then there's the things we want to do, so we have to get those grants.
Yeah.
So we're working pretty hard on that, but that would just be an expansion to what we're doing. So thanks, Ryan, for letting me put you on the spot. So that's exciting. We're doing Camp Invention this summer. It will serve about, and I'll get the number wrong, but about 120 students in Hardin County. And that'll be a week camp where they're actually going to solve a problem with common household items, and they invent and innovate, and a pretty powerful camp that we're working here in Kenton Elementary School. We're bringing in Tech Corps for the high school, and they're going to do a 2-week computer programming summer course for high school students. So to take it a step beyond what they're maybe doing in class, or to build upon those skills that they're learning in the different technology classes we offer at the high school. So that's pretty powerful. This is still kind of in the works, but there's a invention land, and the Inventors Museum is all based out of Pittsburgh, and it's a lot of where this innovation in STEM and things come from, curriculum that we like, that we use. And so they do days of innovation in Pittsburgh and allow school districts to come in, and they've spread out to a couple different states. Well, we're in talks right now that Kenton Elementary may be the first building and will be the first district to host one in the state of Ohio, which is pretty powerful when you think about how long we've been doing STEM in these different courses. It all started with Ohio High Point and the Northwood programs. Actually, to be fair, Mr. Funkhauser was doing it prior to that through his computer programming and robotics clubs that he started working with Honda. And so we're really excited, and there's a good possibility that the innovation, the Day of Innovation, and allowing school districts to learn about STEM will be coming to Ohio, and that's powerful just for Ohio schools. So that's the pieces that I wanted to share about grant writing and about our STEM and Leader in Me programs. The next is an announcement. So the Alumni Committee reviewed all of the applications, and we have chosen 2 applicants to be inducted to the first class of the Alumni Hall of Fame. And this will happen, we hope, at graduation, should everything work. And the 2 that were chosen were Lieutenant General John Michael Murray and Dr. William Allen Wentz. And so more information will be coming out about their accomplishments and why they were chosen, and we're working to get that Hall of Fame. It will probably be plaques at the high school as well as recognition at our graduation ceremony in May. So thank you for everyone who did submit applications, and we'll keep those on file and consider in future years those applications as well as take new applications. But the committee worked very hard this year, and we're proud of our 2 applicants. Next on the agenda, I know this will probably fall under Doug a little bit with policy, but I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out there. The policy committee has been working basically since August on working on a random student drug testing policy and procedures for the district. We worked as a team. We gathered information from the community, from our forums, and we have drafted a policy that we've given to our attorney, and we've looked over all of the edits and believe that what we have we could work with, and that's been submitted to all board members. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is to read that policy. If you have questions about the policy, make sure that you ask. Get opinions from the community, because next board meeting, that will be a separate resolution, a separate item, and we'll ask you to vote on whether or not the Kenton City Schools should adopt a random student drug testing policy. Now remember, those are pretty restrictive on who we're allowed to test, and that's basically dictated by the Supreme Court verdict. So understand that the policy committee, and working with what I call the community committee, if you will, led by Mr. Labus, we think that there's still work to be done and layers that can be improved upon that would reach a larger group of kids. So there are other things we're doing besides submitting this policy for your consideration. And some of those things are, one of the items is on tonight's agenda. We believe that the mental health piece and being able to serve any child or any student or any family that would need support. We're going to add another, essentially it's a social worker through Northwest Health Partners. It's kind of a complicated process, but basically we have to pay half the salary of each person. So we can have 2, one K6, one 712. And so for the, I think it's 60,000 and some change on the agenda item, that will give us 2 full-time social workers that can provide mental health services to students in the Kenton City Schools. We currently have 1 that we hire, that we actually get through a grant through Northwest Health Partners. The other, we do have a person on staff as well that's a school-based social worker, and that would be Jessica Parsley, who we've talked about earlier tonight, who presented a couple months ago, that's at the middle school. The other layer that we think is huge, and we've been talking about for a while, but kind of all came to a big meeting that we had in February, was the resource officer for the Kenton City Schools. And wishful thinking, multiple resource officers, because to cover 3 buildings is a little bit of a challenge. And so we've been working closely with Chief Musser on what that might look like. We've drafted some resolutions, and he's working with the city on those pieces, as well as looking at the finances. City is working hard to see how they can fund their part, as well as us, how we would fund our part. But the layer that brings to the table for this drug awareness is that we want that resource officer to be able to engage kids, to engage families, to talk to kids about drug use and those kinds of things. And we also identified through our forums that we haven't been able to offer DARE to all of our students. It's just been an issue with scheduling. We've only been able to offer it after school through Club Roar. So we're really looking at how can we offer DARE to more of the, I believe it's 5th grade, but more elementary students, as well as working with Ohio Health. The hospital is working with us to bring some drug awareness programs to the school at no cost to work with our kids and supplement our health teachers and those kinds of things so we can get more. So I just want you to know the layers. What started off is we want a random student drug policy from Mr. Labas and his committee has really grown because we've been able to talk to community, we've been able to engage in forums, and we feel like we're layering so that we can hit as many kids as possible, and really reevaluated how we look at that. And so, I don't know, Clint, if you'd like to tell us a little bit about the city maybe and where we are with the resource officer?
With the city, I don't know what all of you know about it yet, but basically we would be funding our portion. I believe there's about 13 weeks that we would have, as the city would have, this officer being somewhat of a nuisance officer and that kind of thing. So we would have to fund our portion of that, and we're meeting with, I'm on the finance committee, we just had a meeting tonight, in the process of working through where we're going to get that money from our portion to do that, but I'm confident that we're going to be able to, come up with that money from somewhere within our budget, moving money or whatever it might be, but we think it's a pretty big priority to get this resource officer in the school, and I know it was wishful thinking for the 2, but originally we were thinking, hey, yeah, 2, but...
then we looked at dollars.
Yeah, we looked at the dollars. But hopefully, I guess it's a possibility, maybe next Monday we'll have something on our agenda, but more than likely it'll be after that.
And once we get kind of a commitment that the city has found resources, and I'm pretty comfortable that we have our resources, that we can support that position, what you'll see is a resolution then as well, asking the board to reach a shared service agreement with the city for a resource officer. It'd be a Kenton Police Department officer that would be in our school 5 days a week and serve all of our students in all of our buildings. So it's not, we would love to have 3, we would really like to have 2, we can strongly afford 1. And so that's where we'll start until some grants and things come about that we can look at expanding that program. So thank you, and to the city for working with us to try to make that happen.
Yep.
I think that's the longest superintendent report ever.
Hey, Jennifer,
Nothing else to give right
is the drug, going back to the drug policy, is it available to the public to look through as a proposed policy at this
We might be
point?
able to post it. It's just draft right now.
Yeah, correct.
I think
But
we could probably look through.
yeah, as long as it's understood that that's what it is, I guess.
It's still
I think-
draft form. There's still probably, what we're hoping for is a policy committee, and these 2 gentlemen serve on it, is that if there's issues or questions, that if the policy committee needs to get back together and refine anything, we can do that too before a
Yeah.
vote. So
Well, my
I'm
thought
pretty
was that, I mean, I would appreciate, as a board member, some community input into,
That'd be great.
we've had good community input already, but now that you've written the policy, or, you know, at least in its present, you know, first form. Like to offer that to the public so we could, you know, people are interested and want to contact us before we move forward, or, because I'll tell you, I'm trying to figure out, you know, is this the best way to go or not? And so I would like some input from community members to help me make that decision.
And one of the things that I will pull out from that policy and just to talk about is we had talked 7/12 or 9/12, and because of the amount of money that we can commit. Now, understand, this is when we start a project, well, my belief is when we start a project in Kenton City Schools like this, we have to be able to sustain it. So what is the value that we can put in the program that we know we can sustain? That doesn't mean we're not going to put more in when we have it, and that doesn't mean, but we have to have that base number. And so that base number is $5,000, and based on the fact that the tests are like $15, roughly $20 a test, with $5,000, we can really do 9/12 right now, effectively. So that was one of the things that we did, that you will see in the policy, is that we did reduce the pool from 7/12 to 9/12 for right now. So things like that they can see, and I think that's a good reason to post it.
Yeah, I think I read through it, you know, you sent it out here before the meeting, and I think it's polished enough that people will understand it, and there may be some slight changes to it, but I think it'd be helpful maybe to have that out before we vote, so we can get some input if there's people that are interested in doing that.
We'll probably, just so that the public knows, we'll probably just end up posting that on our webpage.
Yeah.
So that if you want access, you'd be able to see. Perfect.
All right. Item 8, move on to board committee reports. Start off with finance.
Finance. I was a little late to finance, but I made it. So if I miss anything or you guys need to chime in, feel free. I don't know, we don't usually say, maybe we should say, but finance is Mark, and then Ms. Hiller and Ms. Penzarski as the finance committee. So starting off, we do have various retirements coming forward, and I don't think this is anything new. Typically, administration evaluates the replacement of retirement positions just to make sure there isn't a possibility of realignment, or you know, in certain positions whether there isn't a different arrangement that would work better, and so that's going. That evaluation process is going on right now. You mentioned the deal with the health partners, and that's on the agenda tonight for the counselor, and we talked about the resource officer. We have some roofing work needs done at the middle school. We kind of have a schedule for that kind of repair, a plan, so to speak, but we had to move that forward basically a year on a couple contracts because of some leaks. Looking at putting a fence or some kind of vehicle guide, let's call it, on the east side of high school, beside the cafeteria. There's ruts in the grass, I guess. Getting lined up to redo the gym floors for the summer, as well as working on a contract we do yearly with the Hardin County engineers to work on our parking lots, mainly the high school one, and also they're going to do some drainage work at Northwood for stormwater, I believe. Been a problem up there, and I think they've got a plan to help it out up there, so they're going to do that this summer. We did have a bid also for the roof of this building, which this building is kind of a different kind of building, and the roof, it does have a pitched roof on it, but it's got gutters. The roof is pitched, but the water doesn't run off the end of the roof. It runs to gutters around the outside of the roof, and it's just a bad idea, probably. But they need some work, and so they've been temporarily, kind of patched to when they develop a problem.
To say we had a leak would have been an understatement, right, Tracy?
Yeah.
It was more like corn.
I had a small pond in my office.
So we're working through that.
They want to change the name to the Niagara Building. If that's any indication, the other thing was they're working on the time card system with the hourly employees. And we have this new accounting system. It's called
E-Finance Plus.
E-Finance Plus. But it's got, there's a glitch in it as far as the time cards with hourly, because we have hourly employees that we pay when they're not working.
We stretch
We stretch their pay all year round.
Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna say, be careful what you say. We pay everybody correctly, Mark. It's just that the system does not agree with how we pay our
everybody. Their time they work through the school year, we stretch out through the summer, basically all year round. And that system will not accommodate that at this point. It won't do it.
It won't allow them to use that as a monitoring for their logging in and logging out for their regular time. But we're working on setting it up to test it with the bus drivers for extracurricular and subs and
our extra routes, because that would be beyond the work daytime. And actually, while we're talking about this, and since Ryan's in the room, on your time card program that you put in place, can they use their names now
They can use whatever they want.
Well, okay, but can we say they can use their names so that we can sort them better? Is there a process that we could change that, like so that it says name instead of put whatever you want?
Yeah, I can take this.
Okay, because I think that would be a big help, because we talked about that consistency to be able to run reports. That is easy, I could take that right now.
And maybe, just to clarify, because I did a poor job of saying, that new system, the problem is it was supposed to have an electronic time card and that would flow right into the system to do payroll without having to enter it manually again. Well, because of this glitch, that's what doesn't work. If it flows into the system, it wants to pay them for all the hours they worked at their pay rate, which doesn't take into account this 12-month pay flow. So that's really the issue with it, and it just isn't programmed into it to do it. So I thought I'd better try again, because I didn't do a very good job. And the second time was pretty zero probably worse.
Yeah, employees, worried about that, or doing it correctly.
One guy told me, when you find yourself in a hole, first thing you stop doing is digging.
Put down the shovel.
Step away from the hole.
All right.
Did a great job.
That's all for finance. Any questions, Mr. Watkins? All right, facilities?
Yeah, that is me. Mr. Watkins actually covered most of the facilities, so thanks. I appreciate that very much. We sent it all your way because most of the projects actually we're going to require some financing. So, but Mark actually mentioned most of those. We've already mentioned the middle school roof. We kind of talked about, really what we talked about is the summer projects that are coming up. Every year we have some summer projects when the kids are out of school, where we actually have a little more accessibility to some classrooms and some roofing and gym floors, of course, we do every year. So really that was the gist of it. The majority project that we're going to continue for facilities is the bus garage. That's going to take up a lot of time for the guys this summer. So.
All right. Extracurricular?
Touching on a little bit, kind of what we talked about last time. We're still evaluating the floors and the lines. You know, we've had some discussion because tennis wants lines and soccer wants lines and football wants lines. So we got to kind of see where the cutoff is there. There's a mattress fundraiser to help that, Saturday, May 12th, and a reverse raffle on April the 7th.
I saw a mattress. What is a mattress fundraiser?
Apparently, they kind of went through it briefly with us. They didn't really go through a lot of detail, but apparently they're bringing a mattress company. It's kind of like a closed-out mattresses, or I guess like a discounted mattresses. I guess 15-20% off a mattress. And
oh, it's actually sales.
Yeah, I mean, they bring mattresses in, and you're actually selling.
I thought maybe it was some.
I thought it was.
I was a little worried about that too.
Princess in the Peak.
Mattresses. They're really mattresses. They're bringing them in there, and you get discounts.
Sales, and they get a cut for that or something. Okay.
I've actually been to one of those mattress sales in Columbus, in the Columbus City School Systems when I lived down there. It was actually kind of a really neat process.
Did you buy one?
We did not at that time, but we were living in an apartment at that time, so it's been a few years ago.
All right, Career Center, Shannon?
Okay, they began interviewing for an advanced manufacturing position. That's at Kenton's satellite program. That's at Northwood. Last Thursday, the junior cosmetology students had their shear ceremony. And then students competing at regional competitions. The kids that did welding, they took first place individual and then third place as a team. And then on March 3rd, Ohio High Point, they hosted Skills USA. And this is the second and final year that High Point will be hosting that because it rotates throughout the region. So that's what's been going on at High Point.
All right. And policy, Doug, we kind of hit on the drug.
We actually did hit on the drug policy. Jennifer did a nice job with that. That was actually been a major topic. And then actually really the only other thing to mention with policy is there's been several policies that just needed updated by Neola, right? Neola is the company that we use to do that. And there's been a lot of those that just needed automatically updates every year.
And there's a new link for the website as well, Ryan, for our policies, because they switched. I know Linda was working with you on that, but they switched to board docs so that the community can always access our policies. And the nice thing is once the board takes action, it's not going to take 2 or 3 months for the website to be updated. And so you'll be able to actually see the policies then in more real time, if you will.
Good enough. Okay. Any old business? No old business. We'll move on to new business. Personnel items. We have 10A through 10J. Do I have a motion?
Stryker.
Second.
Carmine.
Okay. Discussion. Got some retirements. Lynn Dickerson, 39 years.
It's that time of year.
Appreciate his service. All right, if there's nothing else, vote.
Mr. Carmine?
Yes.
Mr. Rush?
Yes.
Ms. Stryker?
Yes.
Mr. Watkins?
Yes.
Mr. Albert?
Yes.
Okay, authorizations and resolutions, 11A through 11E. Do you have a motion?
Watkins.
Second.
Albert?
Discussion?
Even though we discussed all the summer projects, if it's over $25,000, that's the ones that the board has to approve. And so even though we've discussed multiple projects, the only one that takes board action would be the roofing. So that's why you only see the one.
Right.
And I wanted to explain, C, board members are required to attend public records training as put on by the Auditor of State office, but you can designate somebody to do that for you.
That would be wonderful.
Tracy?
That's the thing.
So I had already been assigned to do that for Van Loo, so.
Thank you. Thank you.
So that gets you off the hook.
We appreciate that.
But you're more than welcome to go if you really want 3.5 hours of public records training.
Oh, boy.
We just want you to come back and make sure we're compliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll go ahead and vote.
Mr. Rush?
Yes.
Ms. Stryker?
Yes.
Mr. Watkins?
Yes.
Mr. Albert?
Yes.
Mr. Carmine?
Yes.
All right, we're going to go into executive session to discuss personnel. No other action will be taken. Time out is 8:05. Next board meeting, April 16th, 7 o'clock.
Justin Timberlake and his 2016 hit Can't Stop the Feeling, and I think that song featured on Trolls, but I don't know, I've never really seen the movie.
You can find us by searching WKTN Radio on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. News, photos, videos, and more. Even get notified when we go live to bring you the latest information from your region, your radio, WKTN. Can we be friends? When I'm eating
Kroger brand Baby Spring Salad Mix, it's like summer, fall, and winter don't exist. It's spring all year round. So fresh. Super fresh